Part 39. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 399. At the end of the day, Aika and Ruby returned to the Protoss Palace on the return to Sikong. What awaited Aika was the thorny eyes of Ling and Wei 11. Then, I'll go to Oni-sama first and tell her that I'm back. Good night, big brother. Walk slowly. The two glances behind her were like thorns on her back, and Aika sincerely hoped that the time to say goodbye to Ruby could be extended indefinitely. It wasn't until Ruby's petite figure disappeared into the palace hall that Aika turned around to face Ling and Wei 11, who hadn't seen each other for a day. So, now can you explain where you and Ruby went and what you did during the day? Ling was crouched at the waist, and her left foot kept tapping the ground as if reflecting her inner irritability, but on the surface she pretended not to be shaken at all. Brother Aika, please don't lie, lying is useless. Even Wei 11, who had never blamed Aika, clenched her fists in front of her chest, raising her head slightly and staring at him as if she wanted to take out all Aika's secrets. If you want to talk about why it turned into such a scene of embarrassment, it was because the scene where Aika and Ruby were walking down from the Tassi sky was bumped into by Ling and Wei 11, who came here to pick up the plane. At that time, Ruby was hugging Aika's arm tightly, and there was no sense of distance between the two. They were like a stupid couple in love, showing off their affection in public. The innocent Ruby herself probably didn't pay attention to this atmosphere that could easily lead to misunderstanding. At that time, Aika was also completely tightly clamped on her arm. At a young age, she was already as good as Letika's teacher. Attracted by the abundant fruits, you could even feel the violent heartbeat in her chest from that distance. That special softness of Ruby, it wasn't just my arms that got stuck in, there were more indescribable things. Is this what is called family lineage? If this trend continues, Ruby's child will most likely develop into an innocent male killer. He was just thinking about this and that, so Aika didn't notice that there were two pairs of bright eyes witnessing the whole thing. How to explain it? Aika wasn't sure that it was because he cheered for Ruby in the underground cave that he narrowed the distance between them, but other than that, he couldn't think of anything else worth mentioning that he had done to her. During the remaining time after leaving the underground cave, Aika basically spent time communicating with the Protoss investigators on the ground, mainly focusing on technical problems encountered. This abandoned steel factory combines two technologies, magic technology and light core. The bottlenecks encountered when Aika was away can now be partially solved. The investigators are all grateful to Aika for arriving in time at this time. This kind of professional topic was something that Ruby, who didn't understand at all, could interrupt, so she sat quietly and watched Aika interact with others. Aika didn't know that in the eyes of Ruby, whose passionate enthusiasm had not yet cooled down, Aika, who could talk about very professional topics with such confidence, was very handsome, more handsome than anyone else, and it was not because he was addicted to it. He felt dissatisfied that he was being ignored among those cold machines. Or maybe it was because she was yearning for Aika that she didn't even realize that she was actually being left out. Of course, Aika didn't notice the change that occurred in the girl's heart in just a few hours. He only knew that since returning to Sikong, the distance between him and Ruby was no longer that far away. Back to the dilemma Aika faces now. It's impossible to explain nothing, but even if you tell them everything about the whole day, will they really believe it? After trying this, what you are saying now is fine. What I want to know is what part you are hiding. Brother Aika, please don't hide it, hiding it is useless. Isn't this really not feasible? But he had nothing to confess other than to make up facts that didn't exist. The evening breeze under the setting sun brought the fragrance of flowers in the palace courtyard, and from somewhere came a sound similar to the chirping of a returning bird. Whoever it is, it would be nice to be able to pass by and say hello now. This is Aika's most sincere and last wish before this unknown night comes. Since personally entrusting Anja to the Knights of the Purple Rose and taking her away from the suburban castle, Mingila has completely lost contact with the outside world. There was no one who could help her contact anyone outside the suburban castle, and her weak body eroded by the uncontrollable candle dragon molten gold did not allow her to climb over the city wall and take the initiative to go to the outside world. Although there is also a way to bribe the maid who comes into the room every day. But there is no one among them who can be trusted like Enja. If an accident occurs, more innocent people may be involved. Ming has been sitting on the balcony since the morning, leaning on the mechanical wheelchair and looking at the clear sky. The imperial capital is extremely hot today. The cumulus clouds scattered in the sky like cotton balls reflect the bright sunshine, and the clouds are surrounded by a golden glow. As time goes by, the slowly moving clouds merge into tall cloud mountains, the boundaries gradually become blurred, and the golden brilliance is gradually replaced by black, just like the snow-white canvas is constantly being overturned and densely soaked. Soon, the storm will come. There was a polite knock on the door, and the maid delivered a letter to Ming's table. After carefully informing Ming, who had his back turned to her, she bowed and exited the dormitory. After waiting for the maid to leave the dormitory, Ming turned around in his wheelchair, pushed across the open balcony door to the table in the house, and opened a white envelope printed with Senate beeswax. The Senate has always used this method to convey to her things that Ming must know, and Ming is unwilling to face them in person, so this method also ensures a balanced relationship between the two parties. Looking at the content written on the parchment, Ming could not conceal his inner surprise. "Your Majesty, the Emperor is coming back." The imperial brother referred to here is of course not the second Prince Philipila who is currently acting for Ming, but the first prince of the BZ Empire who is away all year round. The man who is now known as the strongest in the empire leads his own team of knights and senior scholars to explore the ruins he is interested in. If the information written in the letter is true, it must be big news that shocked August. The man who symbolizes freedom may be late, but he will never be absent. This letter mainly informs Ming of important matters, which is that there will be a welcoming dinner when the first prince returns. Ming had to attend that dinner. This seemed to be the intention not of the Senate but of the first prince himself. The situation is in turmoil now, and only a handful of people have yet to take a stand. The first prince is one of them. Until now, he has no clear position. Of course, the Senate will not give up any opportunity to win over that man. This is a rare opportunity to go out. For Her Royal Highness, who has been sleeping as a vase in the boudoir of this castle for so long, it is naturally like a ray of light from the apocalypse. Putting down the envelope in his hand, Ming adjusted his excitement at the moment. Within a few seconds, the maid waiting outside the bedroom politely knocked on the door and walked in. "I want to prepare to attend the banquet and tell the Senate that I want to prepare a new dress. The choice of costume designer must be made by Master Aurora, who has the highest reputation in our empire. I want her to come here in person to measure my size. New. Allowing unrelated people to enter or leave this suburban castle must obtain the consent of the monitors, and naturally must be reviewed by the Senate. Before the outbreak of the August Rebellion, the dresses of the two princesses were made by Master Aurora. But she had never been to Augustus in person, and the finished products were sent to the hands of the two princesses by mail. However, considering her reputation in the empire's design industry, she did not respect the famous princesses enough. Qing was blamed. No one in August knows the true identity of Master Aurora. They only know that she once only engaged in various design works among the private sector. The value of her works was gradually discovered by the design industry and she gained her current reputation. All orders will be delivered to an ordinary tailor shop in the imperial capital. There were no working clerks in that shop, and there was no display of finished products. Master Aurora's few finished products either became collections of princes and nobles, or became exhibits in major exhibitions. There are only a few autonomous robots in the store taking orders and cleaning the store. There is an unwritten rule that customers can only approach the entrance at most. An unexpected opportunity brought Anja into contact with the true identity of Master Aurora. In the past, the two maids who were princesses took the measurements and then filled out the order, but now that Anja was not around, Ming did not allow anyone else to take the measurements for her. Banquet dress is equivalent to another face of the royal family. Since the Senate had to allow her to attend, they naturally had to decorate the vase perfectly in front of the public, so the request for Master Aurora to come to the suburban castle in person must also be agreed to. Ming finally took the first step forward while Ng was not around. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 400. Ika, Lan Ming and others left Chiyu Academy earlier than planned by the Senate. It didn't make much sense for Lilith to stay in Chiyu Academy, so she returned to the imperial capital early. The change in this plan was not even anticipated by the Senate, so it naturally cannot be regarded as a failure of Lilith's mission. But for some unknown reason, the Senate still fulfilled the generous benefits they originally proposed to the Lilith family. After the long meeting with Augustus, Lilith, who returned to the mansion, had a rare meal with Ms. Elise, who took time out of her busy schedule. "I don't know what you did at Chiyu Academy, and I think it's not something I should know. The family's power has indeed been strengthened now. We are now basically on an equal footing with the Fu family. It's all because of you. The results of the efforts brought to the family." Lilith ate her dinner quietly. Originally there was no conversation at the dinner table, but Ms. Elise seemed to take time out to have dinner with Lilith just to talk about the changes during this period. Today's imperial capital does not show any sense of tension during the war. The war has always been maintained within the borders of the Tiberai kingdom. The Bis Empire has not even been affected in any way. It can be said that the overwhelming advantage of the Bis Empire in this war has been reflected. "Mother, thank you for your praise. I am old enough to inherit the family headship. This is the contribution I should make to the family." "That's right, Lilith, you have grown up, so you must always remember that you must be responsible for your words and deeds. This is also the responsibility you must fulfill as the head of the family in the future. Any of your actions can change overnight. It can bring glory to the family, but it can also destroy the entire family overnight." The sound of knives, forks, and dishes was heard on the dining table, and the conversation between the two stopped unnaturally. Perhaps, even though the two of them were talking about the same topic, they were thinking about other things in their hearts. "You should know, before you left, the Dell family made a request for marriage, right?" This is the fundamental reason why Lilith resists returning to the imperial capital. As long as she thinks about having to deal with Roosevelt Dell, whose relationship has not been broken off, Lilith, who is already exhausted physically and mentally, simply doesn't want to care about this kind of thing anymore. While using Roosevelt Dell, who was the director of the Imperial City Intelligence Bureau, the eldest son of the Fu family, who had fallen in love with Lilith several years ago, also launched a persistent pursuit of her. If you don't care about their status and current political positions, Roosevelt Dell may be a successful man suitable for Lilith, and Lilith does not hate his essence. But Lilith has already made up her mind, and there is no need to waste time thinking about other marriages. Ms. Elise also knows who her daughter really likes. If you ask her whether she supports it or not, the answer is more towards the latter. In today's turbulent background, Lilith's girlish heart cannot be allowed to be willful. Of course, Ms. Elise also came from Lilith's current age, and she also took into account her mood and tried to delay the time to reply to Dell's house. Seeing Lilith's frown, Ms. Elise put down the teacup in her hand. Now that marriage is cancelled, it was the Dell family who took the initiative. Without thinking too much about why it happens so suddenly every time, Lilith's surprised expression was already filled with joy that the marriage was cancelled. But while Ms. Elise conveyed this matter, she also had an obligation to let Lilith know the cause and effect, although she may not want to know. During the time you returned to Frost Moon Academy, major changes occurred in the Imperial Intelligence Agency. Roosevelt Dell, as the director, was dismissed and placed on probation. A major change in the Imperial Intelligence Agency? Isn't it now completely controlled by that faction? Lilith only connected the so-called major changes with the August Rebellion. If there were any major events that had happened in the BZ Empire recently, this was the only one that could be counted. She also investigated information from the Imperial Intelligence Agency in order to get closer to Roosevelt Dell. That organization is equivalent to the lifeblood of the BIS Empire. 90% of the Empire's data is archived and backed up there, and it also takes care of the exchange of intelligence on diplomacy and other activities. The Imperial Intelligence Agency and its 4 branches are impregnable and cannot be easily breached. Yes, but it is said that this time it was caused by a third-party intrusion. Ms. Elise confirmed her doubts. She knew the lifeblood of the BIS Empire better than Lilith. It was more like breaking in from the outside than breaking through from the outside. It seemed that the interior was under the influence of spiritual magic. The staff of the General Administration leaked all the information that was said to be very important to the Kingdom of Tiburai. After that, when they were investigated, they all pointed to the instructions of Roosevelt Dell. And he himself used the information. The identity of the Bureau conveyed wrong information to the frontline headquarters. It is said that the frontline troops of the Tiburai Kingdom are now in a stalemate because of this incident by the Imperial Intelligence Agency. This is half a month since the war began. The main reason why there has been no significant progress. That's right. Even if she knew this fact, it didn't sound very real to Lilith. In the territory of the BZ Empire, there was no atmosphere of war at all. Ordinary people only listened to the news and made casual comments on whether the so-called war situation had stagnated. Moreover, for Lilith, the Imperial Intelligence Agency was just a department that she basically had no dealings with. So no matter what kind of major changes happened there, Lilith could only sigh with emotion of "so that's how it is." What about the current situation of the Dell family? If something like this happens, will their family be like the Kalu family? I haven't heard of any special arrangements from the Senate. I heard that the man Roosevelt Dell took all the responsibilities. Ms. Elise sighed, although he is standing in the Senate over there, but the values are at least correct. The Dell family and the Roxy family also hold a lot of power in the military. Considering this, the Senate may give them some leniency, but it may also be it's more likely to be bad than good. Lilith thought back to the man Roosevelt Dell. When I was with him, I thought more about how to use him, and didn't think much about enjoying that time. Looking back now, if we were just dating as equals in the beginning, we actually didn't have the same greasy feeling of disgust as when we were dating other princes and nobles. This happened when she went to Frost Moon Academy. Lilith only learned about the general situation from Ms. Elise. She could only pray in her heart that Roosevelt Dell would be dealt with fairly, and other things were no longer things she needed to consider. I've heard it from Klaus. After leaving Frost Moon Academy this time, you won't go back there again, right? Lilith nodded without hesitation. This was her determined answer. Because the people who need me are no longer in Shiyu Academy, I can't keep hiding in that safe zone. Many things happened during this period, which made me realize how weak I was after leaving Shiyu Academy. In order to quickly extract information about the whereabouts of Lan Mingyila, the impatient Lilith skipped Roosevelt Dell and started directly from his subordinate Lars. Unexpectedly, Lars, who had already noticed it, counterattacked. If Brad Roche hadn't killed the perverted man in time, Lilith couldn't imagine how miserable she would be now. After regaining her composure, Lilith tried to contact Military Minister Faustin. It was obvious that the experienced man had already noticed his purpose, but he had no idea about it. If he hadn't been spared by Faustin, he wouldn't be safe now. Hearing that the day Ika and Lan Ming left Frost Moon Academy, Lilith found Principal Felice and learned that they were not allowed to return to Frost Moon Academy until the turmoil in the BIS Empire was over. In this case, even if you stay in Shimizuki Academy, it is difficult to do something for the person you like. At this time, she thought of the boy she had worked with briefly. Mother, I have something very important to say to you. It's rare to have such an opportunity now, so I want to take a little more of your time. Is it about future plans? Yes. Ms. Elise has long seen through that Lilith cannot return to this family just to be the flower of her boudoir. Now Ms. Elise no longer plans a future for Lilith as semi-hardly as before. Lilith experienced many things where Ms. Elise could not see her, and even had an intersection with the Senate at the center of the August Rebellion just after returning to the imperial capital. If she lets go and lets her explore the future on her own, more possibilities may bloom. You have grown up and I will respect your opinions as much as possible. Ms. Elise raised her hand and motioned for Sarah to remove the tableware from the table. After Sarah left, Ms. Elise, who was busy with her busy schedule, did not leave the table. Instead, she sat face to face with Lilith, which meant that she had given all her time tonight to her daughter. The plan to be discussed next had already been fully planned when Lilith boarded the aviation magic ship to welcome her back to the imperial capital. Now it was just to seek Ms. Elise's consent. The key is whether Lilith is discussing with her mother from the position of Ms. Elise's daughter, or whether she is negotiating with the current head of the family as the heir to the family head. When she walked into this house, Lilith had already adjusted her mentality. Now she is no longer senior Lilith who is an ignorant quasi-graduate, but Lilith who is the quasi-heir of the current noble family. There was no need for her to let anyone else know the full extent of her plans. As long as she gets the permission of the current head of the family, Ms. Elise, Lilith can achieve what she wants to do in her own way. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 401. After Ica and Ruby's happy day, a figure wearing a crimson feather suddenly appeared in the palace of the gods. The young girl eunuch casually found a passing waiter in the corridor and asked him to take her to Ica's room. Unfortunately, Ica himself is not in the room right now. Unique asked the waiters, but they didn't know where Ica had gone. I still want to return this machine to him, forget it, just wait here. He will always come back, right? After Unique asked the waiter to leave, she stayed alone in Ica's room. The PDA she placed casually on the table showed an illusory image. Saint Anili is still wearing a pair of violet-colored dresses today, and her beaded shoes are luxurious and elegant, but now her face is a bit unsightly. What are you doing, old guy? I'm only halfway through what I said. It's just because I saw you so anxious that I came here. Unique casually sat on the edge of Ica's bed with her feet raised. Wouldn't it be better if we all chatted together? Now is not the time to chat leisurely. I have something very important to inform the descendants of the Kin's family. So I'm already sitting in his room. What's the use of just sitting here? Anili's beautiful face was now flushed with anxiety and anger. If she could move freely without relying on a PDA, she would have broken open the door and gone out to find the owner of this room. What important thing are you talking about? Is there anything more important than the two of us meeting like this? First of all, you should know that I have spent a lot of effort in the past 2 days to get you here from the humans. Right? Then no matter what, Unili, the first thing you have to do is to stay here with me, right? Stop saying such selfish things, Unique. Now my granddaughter's country is in chaos, and everyone is busy working on this matter. How can we, as a race, indulge our own selfish desires like this? Thinking that she had criticized Unique's willful request seriously enough, Unili relaxed her tone after speaking. Unique, we should solve the urgent needs of the overall situation first, and I will spend whatever time I have in the future with you. You spend time together. Then. Unique still pouted with some dissatisfaction, but she no longer struggled with the willful request, "What are you going to tell them? Tell me first." Although Unique had reluctantly accepted Enili's irrefutable argument, she still refused to give in like a spoiled child. At this time, other people's voices came from outside the door that was not closed. "Is the young lady really there?" "Yes, we think we should notify you first. It seems that the current queen is here." This time I clearly remember the voices of the people I met. What's there to be proud of in something like this? I haven't interacted with the outside world for such a long time. Is it the same for Enili? Don't confuse me with you, a otaku who never leaves home. I just used magic to freeze the passage of time in my body. Then there's no difference. Unique didn't care whether there was really no difference between the two. She sat on the edge of the bed and swayed her legs with a smile. The person who walked into the room unhurriedly was the waiter who had led Unique before. This time he also brought tutor Letica and Aika. The door to the room in the palace of the God clan can only be opened by the holder. Even Her Royal Highness the Princess of the God clan cannot break in by force. So after being informed by the waiter, teacher Letica took some time to find Aika, who was visiting and studying into Sikong with Kara Little. Having said that, in fact, as long as teacher Letica came to the room to take a look first, Unico, who broke in without any scruples, would let her in. But at that time, she was only thinking about how to entertain the legendary childish lady. Instead of saying that the panicked teacher Letica's brain suddenly short-circuited, it would be better to say that this was her usual dull performance. Enili. As soon as Aika stepped into the room, she noticed the elegant and beautiful girl who had not appeared for a long time. Because she is an ancestor of the Ila family, and because of the inheritance of her bloodline, Unili's gestures reveal a sense of intimacy that is very similar to Lan Ming's. The composition in the room now is that Enili, with her arms akimbo and frowning, angrily scolding Unique, who is sitting on the edge of the bed with her legs crossed, and the pouting Unique looks very aggrieved and pitiful. "Aha, Aika, you are finally here." Perhaps because she was seen to be too close to Unico and worried about losing her dignity, Enili quietly regained her composure and calm demeanor. "Enili, long time no see." Compared with Unili's eager attitude before, Aika's tone, who was still unaware of the seriousness of the situation, was obviously too leisurely. Instructor Letica on the other side was busy comforting Unique. She just said hello to Enili without being disrespectful. In her heart, the source of the god's faith, the young lady, was probably more important than the human saint. However, Enili never cares about such small things. Being able to appear in front of people in this manner is already a miracle brought by magic technology. Aika, listen carefully. According to the recent intelligence feedback from the Holy See, the war situation between the Bizi Empire and the Tiburai Kingdom has now completely reversed. The magicians of that kingdom seem to have introduced a kind of weapon that is very similar to the magical equipment. Weapons, and in quite large quantities. Basically all their magicians on the front line are equipped with those weapons. A weapon that is very similar to the magic weapon. Looking at the information, it looks like an inferior version created based on the concept of magic equipment. It is almost the same as the product of the Project Zero that was frozen in the early days of the establishment of the Bis Empire. This was the first time Aika heard about Project Zero, and he didn't know where Enili meant it was the same. But when it comes to weapons that are very similar to magic equipment, they have only faced that kind of thing in the past week. Mimicry magic costume. So you know. Is that weapon called the mimic magic equipment? It's a very appropriate name. We were investigating related to the mimicry magic equipment some time ago. Who is this one? At this time, other people who heard the news also gathered in Aika's room. When Lan Ming saw Unili for the first time, who looked like him 10 years later, he couldn't help but fall into shock. Unili also noticed Lan Ming standing behind Aika. This was the first time that the ancestors of the Eula family and the 6th generation successors met on the same timeline. When Lan Ming was just born, she was told by her family that her ancestor had died, so she only knew Yunali's appearance from the portrait in August Castle. But neither the portraits worth over 100 million yuan nor the vivid sculptures could perfectly show Yunali, who was standing in front of Lan Ming. "Oh, you are Lan Ming Yila, right?" "You are." Lan Ming murmured and did not immediately respond to Yunali's question. But soon, Lan Ming came out of the shock. Perhaps she was able to recover from the shock so quickly, thanks to Ika explaining things about Inili to her beforehand. Lan Ming gently raised the hem of his skirt and saluted the legendary Saint Yunali, who was also his grandmother. Her elegant behavior is fully worthy of the name of the Yila family, and she shows her elegant style. "First time meeting you, Your Highness Yunali Yila, I am Lan Ming Yila from the Yila family. I have heard a little bit about your deeds from His Royal Highness the Emperor and His Royal Highness the Queen Mother, and I can relate to you. It would be a great honor. You don't have to be polite. I have already heard about you from the descendants of the Qin's family." Yinili walked up to Lan Ming and raised her long sleeves to signal Lan Ming to stand up. "So, may I ask, Grandma, I just heard you talking about Project Zero outside the door. Lan Ming, do you also know what the Project Zero is?" "Well," Lan Ming nodded in response to Ika's question, "that is a secret that only the royal family is allowed to know. It is a plan that has been frozen 100 years ago. Lan Ming, it's up to you to explain it to the people here. If the mimicry magic equipment Ika mentioned is really a relic of the Zero Project, then it is what our Yula family will leave to future generations. There is no need to use the fig leaf of secret to cover up our sins." "I understand. Please correct me if my explanation is different from my grandmother's understanding." Yinili nodded in agreement, and then Lan Ming slowly said the mysterious term he had used to test number 5. "Project Zero is the predecessor of the magic technology that now makes human beings develop and prosper. When the magic equipment appeared on the mainland, the cross-border war was at its most intense stage. Even if humans obtained some of the magic equipment, but in other cases we still appear weak in front of race. Humanity truly left a glorious mark in the history of the continent precisely when magical technology developed to a more mature stage. But in the early days of magic equipment, humans had not even figured out the concept of magic machinery. It happened to be during that period that two families that had already made many great achievements in the war, namely the Qin's family, known as the Bis Twin Towers by later generations, obtained mechanical alchemy, and Heinz the family got the light flame sword. The power of these two families once again achieved an unprecedented leap. At least at that time, they should be as famous as our Illa family. Lan Ming made a small mistake. At that time, those two families could not be called Fu surnamed families. The Bizi Empire was only established after the cross-border war. At that time, the system of grading based on whether one possessed magic equipment had not yet been formed. Because it had nothing to do with the overall situation, Yunali did not interrupt Lan Ming's explanation and went out of her way to correct this mistake. The power of mechanical alchemy transcends the laws of the world, and Ika should know it better than anyone here. It can completely generate the exact same power based on the concept, and can even use the power that transcends the laws of the world to give birth to countless similarly transcendental creatures. The power of the laws of the world. So when the concept of magic technology began to take shape, the idea of Project Zero was born. Are you saying that you want to use the power of mechanical alchemy to create infinite magic equipment? The specific content of Project Zero has long been frozen by the Imperial City Intelligence Bureau. The only people who know the specific content of that plan may be people like Grandma who came from that era. Lan Ming could only explain so far. What exactly happened during that period, why Project Zero failed and was permanently frozen, and why Anili said Project Zero was the crime they left to future generations, everything has been buried in history. In the dust of Feng Chen, even the royal family is not allowed to know the past of Feng Chen. The only person who knows the inside story of what happened between humans is the saint who is now standing here in an illusory form, Enili Yila, who witnessed that history with her own eyes. Seeing that Lan Ming had finished what she could explain, Yinili spoke on her behalf. 1 or 2 days would not be enough to explain the specific content of that plan, as well as some other trivial matters. Now there are other more important things to explain. It is enough to understand what Lan Ming just said. So I won't go into details. Even if there is the power of mechanical alchemy, if the concept of magic equipment cannot be analyzed, there will naturally be no way to mass produce it. In the final analysis, it is still unknown whether mechanical alchemy can exert that kind of foul power. When after we discovered the basics of the concept of magic equipment, in order to apply it in war as soon as possible, we turned to actively develop another technology, which is the current magic technology. I heard Unique say before that you two were involved in the development of magic technology, right? Both sides can learn from each other's strengths. At that time, the relationship between I and Unique can be said to be good, and at the same time, they both thought of using the opportunity of the magic suit to end the war. Inili showed a comfortable smile towards Unique, who was sitting by the bed, and Unique, who had a tacit understanding, also smiled knowingly. As cross-race lovers during the cross-border war, the two of them must be best friends that Ika could never imagine. That feeling may have been fully contained in the smile just now. In short, the Zero project was only suspended at that time. It was not restarted until the end of the cross-border war and the official establishment of the Bis Empire. However, during that period, the war with the Principality of Sentia broke out again. The Esi family and the Heinz family raised objections in the parliament, and experienced many complicated changes in the process. Even though I was the queen, I could not save the two families with a majority decision. They were regarded as betrayers behind their backs. The people of the empire disappeared after that. Without the power of mechanical alchemy, it is just impossible to develop magic equipment by human power alone. During this period, many failures were repeated, and there were even human experiments that violated human ethics. In the end, I could only announcing that Project Zero will be frozen and will never be carried out again. In other words, is the mimicry magic equipment manufactured by the workshop the result of the reopening of the frozen Project Zero? That's right. I think the mimicry magic equipment should have used the technology left over from Project Zero, including the side effects on the human body that have not been corrected. Lan Ming said thoughtfully. I was taken away by number 5. I also tentatively mentioned things about that plan at that time, and I always felt that he should know something. Maybe he, like Mishi, is also related to that plan, or the culprit who leaked the information of that plan. It's impossible to question them now, but as long as they are still active, they will definitely show their traces at some point. His body was not found within the area of the number 5 crash. Although it was imagined that a fall from that height would result in no bones left, investigators dismissed this possibility. It is very possible that Mishi is a researcher in the northwest region of the empire. By some chance, she came into contact with the forbidden technology that was frozen 100 years ago and became the manager of the workshop. But now she has disappeared with Komaki. It seems that you have also come into contact with the mimicry magic equipment in this Protoss territory. It would be easy to say if it is the same as the weapons appearing on the front lines of the two countries. As long as that kind of weapon appears on the battlefield, it will soon be between the two countries. It has spread, but fortunately it seems to be just a sign now. But as long as this war continues, it will one day fully spread. If it really develops to that point, it will not only affect the troops participating in the war, but all of humanity. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 402. What the Holy Lady said is absolutely true. The current situation on the front line has reached a stalemate due to the introduction of weapons you call mimic magic equipment. Although the Imperial Army's magic technology theoretically has an absolute advantage, if the opponent's national magician, if you fully use the power of the mimicry magic equipment without any taboo, the casualties on both sides will be very heavy. Pope Thetis said this with certainty in his communication. The Holy See was not essentially aligned with the Augustan regime. Since the Holy See has also issued a warning about this war, it is indeed a state of emergency that cannot be delayed. So the Holy See hopes that we can intervene in this war and completely destroy the source of the mimicry magic equipment. Judging from the current situation, the most suitable people to intervene in the war are you who have no affiliation. Whether it is our Holy See or the Imperial City Defense Bureau, although they have not directly entered the front-line battlefield, they are nominally connected to the BIS Empire. Battlefield activities between the two countries will be greatly restricted. Cethes' attitude seemed very sincere. But after Enili revealed his true purpose, I knew not to completely believe Thetis' apparent attitude. Of course, we don't want to take advantage of Her Highness the Third Princess's current status. Now everyone's focus is on the war, and Augustus will not pay too much attention to Her Highness the Third Princess's movements for the time being. But if we directly attack them, if the plan causes obstacles, there is no doubt that it will become a target. Now I have accurately told you the basic situation in the country. It is up to you to decide what actions you will take next. Wait a minute, that, His Excellency Pope Cethes? Although we did come into contact with the smuggling group related to the mimic magic equipment on the Protoss side, in the final analysis, this is technology flowing out from within the BIS Empire, right? After experiencing such a fierce battle, Ling also fully realized the power of the mimicry magic equipment. If that kind of thing is manufactured endlessly, the consequences will be disastrous. If we don't uncover the traitor who is collaborating with them, this protracted war won't be a long-term solution, right? Another point is that the Holy See is also investigating the Nemesis Society now, right? Then you need to know this. Ika paused. The smuggling group that leaked the mimicry magic equipment is also related to the Nemesis Society. They have already used mimicry magic equipment to cause a magic collapse in the territory of the gods. This information made Cethes fall into silence, but it seemed to be more expected than shocked. The Nemesis Society may be related to this incident. We have considered it before. After all, their purpose of hunting magic equipment is no secret to you and me. Mimicry magic equipment is essential to achieve their goals. The medium they obtained. If they have the ability to create mimicry magic equipment, they will definitely not let it go easily. In that case, of course, there may also be members of the Nemesis Society infiltrating the BIS Empire, but now we don't have that much power to screen them out one by one. So what Miss Hines said is that it is very difficult to find the traitor who leaked the secret. It is difficult to achieve. At this stage, we can only work together with you, start from the surface, and then gradually approach the deeper layers. Your Excellency, Pope Cethes, I have some ideas. Can I interrupt? Of course, Her Majesty the Queen of the Protoss. The mimic magic equipment smuggling group incident happened in your Protoss territory, and you are the one with the most say. Before Cethes started exchanging information with Ika and the others, Mentor Letica had already introduced herself to Cethes at the minimum level. In the territory of the gods, Mentor Letica's right to speak is more important than Ika's, not to mention that she and the Holy See also support Lan Ming's actions, which Cethes already knows. At least, he would not despise any opinions put forward by Teacher Letica. I don't know much about the Nemesis Society. The information we exchanged before has already mentioned that in the territory of the gods, there are workshops that specialize in manufacturing mimic magic equipment and are responsible for transporting them to all parts of the continent. Chamber of Commerce. It is not difficult to imagine that supplying large quantities of mimicry magic equipment to the army of the Kingdom of Tiberi can gain immeasurable benefits. This is probably one of the sources of funding for the Nemesis Society and related organizations. But creating an integrated mimicry magic equipment, the cost of the equipment is also difficult to predict, at least it cannot be compared with the magic equipment commonly used by human armies. From this perspective, the above point seems to be invalid. Regarding this, His Excellency Pope Sethis, what do you think? At least it is certain that selling mimicry magic equipment is not their main source of funds. In addition, they have other channels that connect more power relations. This is why we think it is impossible to transfer Nemesis to the main reason for the uprooting of associations. Pope Sethis could only reveal this much to Mentor Letica, who is the princess of the god clan. We heard about this when we fought with Mishi. Mishi and Komaki used the mimic magic equipment as a tool to collect data such as heart. The Nemesis Society wanted to use the mimic magic equipment, triggering the collapse of magic in the entire continent. Although the purposes are different, they are all the meaning of the existence of the mimicry magic equipment for them. They should be more concerned about these two purposes, rather than financial interests. Heart data. We don't quite know what that woman's words meant. She probably had some insights into why the magic suit was born with human-like consciousness, and then thought of studying that kind of thing. The thinking of a mad scientist is not understandable by ordinary people. Ling's analysis seems to make sense. Ling said seemingly casually, but in fact she had always been worried about this matter. But the child next to that woman. What Ling is concerned about is Xiaomaki, who is beside Mixi. Although Mixi said that their relationship is that of mother and daughter, it doesn't feel that way to me. Nemisi, there are also very young children like Misty in the SI Guild. I wonder if they are also like the children of the Sea Mist Fleet. I feel the same way. Misty, who always follows Veer in the Nemesis Society, is an elf, so her true age cannot be determined. But Komaki is undoubtedly a human. What's more, she also has a magic suit. Does the child you are talking about possess a magic suit? This sentence caught Sethi's attention. Do you know the true identity of that magic suit? That seems to be a magic outfit that can control everything. There are silk threads extending from the fingers. Ika could only describe the visual impression left on him. Ling should be more impressed, right? Yeah. I was once controlled by her using that magic outfit. That ability is not a spiritual magic, but the ability to directly and forcibly control objects. Hitomi, is my magic suit. I call that magic suit the Puppet Master's Cross. Is it possible to manipulate the target's Puppet Master's Cross? I'll write it down first. If this is a recorded magic outfit, maybe the true identity of the owner can be found. This kind of investigative work can only be left to Sethis. It would be difficult for anyone present to have access to the magic equipment information that recorded what was known during the cross-border war and is now held by humans. Only Pope Sethis could easily retrieve it. If Mishi is really gone, then there seems to be no use in continuing to collect this kind of data. As long as the Nemesis Association directly takes the existing mimicry magic equipment, it can control the magic collapse of a city many times. But they still use these completed mimic magic equipment as consumables and flow into the battlefield in large quantities, probably for the purpose of collecting data, that is to say. The incident that we thought was over is not over yet. Wei 11 didn't want to see the tragic scene caused by the collapse of magic power again. That heart-wrenching scene could still appear in front of her eyes at any time. Even though the mimicry magic equipment smuggling group incident has now entered its final stage, in fact the incident is still continuing to develop in human countries far away from the territory of the gods. There is definitely more than one mimicry magic equipment manufacturing factory like Gongfang, as the saying goes. But the core figures who master this technology have been identified, that is, Mishi, who is the Northwestern Research Institute of the Bis Empire, the unidentified girl Komaki, and the Nemesis Society behind them. Therefore, if we could defeat them directly, we might be able to stop this vicious cycle permanently. Her Royal Highness the Queen of the God Clan, on behalf of the Holy See, I have a merciless request to the God Clan. I wonder if you can consider it? Please speak directly, Your Excellency, Pope Sethis. The human Holy See also plays an important role in the continent, and we will seriously consider your opinions. Teacher Letica openly negotiated with Sethis. Although she only accepted the position of Queen of the Gods not long ago, she already has the demeanor of a queen. We hope that the gods can participate in handling this incident with the Holy See on an equal footing. As far as I know, since the gods have publicly accepted Her Royal Highness the Third Princess, does it mean that they have also accepted her status as a fugitive from the Bes Empire? And on this basis, support all her actions regarding the Bes Empire? This written question, putting aside all subjective factors, is probably the key to finalizing the outcome of today's tripartite talks between the escapees, the gods, and the Holy See. Teacher Letica didn't know how to properly answer Sethi's question, and looked at Ica with a hint of help. Although both sides stated their respective positions before the talks began, there are still things that can be said and things that cannot be said. Ica just nodded to confirm that Teacher Letica would continue. The gods do have objections to the ruling proposed by the Bes Empire. We cannot recognize today's new human regime before we get strong evidence. Okay, so I will make your current attitude very clear. The gods are one of the pillars of the continent. Of course we hope to be fully recognized by the gods. The Holy See also shoulders the responsibility of coordinating the relationship between humans and other races. In this regard, we accept questions raised by the Protoss next, Sethis' private question, but what is done now is not enough, right? Although the Protoss is the backing of surveillance, it is not objectively convincing enough for humans. Pope Sethis could see at a glance the serious problems hidden behind the seemingly smooth progress, and Ica had to admit it. You are right. Our ultimate goal is to help Lan Ming find evidence that she was framed. This is to gain recognition from the people of the Bes Empire and force the radicals to return power to Lan Ming. So in the final analysis, public opinion guides it is in the hands of human beings themselves, and most importantly, it requires human support. You are very smart. If the Bes Empire is firmly controlled by the Senate, you can only choose the Tiberai Kingdom as a breakthrough. This war is precisely because the Emperor was assassinated in the Tiberai Kingdom, and the first Her Royal Highness the Third Princess happened to be present, so in order to resolve this conflict, returning to the source is the most correct choice. Sethis gave a hint and then turned to look at Teacher Letica. Here, I only represent the Holy See, not the Bes Empire. I hope that we and the gods can form an alliance. This approach will also bring another benefit. After the cross-border war, there are now conflicts between various races on the mainland. Without the connection point, if our two races take the lead in uniting for good cooperation, we may become the forerunner of the united continent in the future. Sethis did not use the same goal to encourage Teacher Letica to agree. Although he said verbally that he did not represent the Bes Empire, he further represented a larger scope, the human race extended an olive branch to the gods. I understand. But this time, we have a common goal only in the incident related to the mimicry magic equipment, and the Protoss will also bear part of the responsibility for this. Ica and the others have defeated the main force of the smuggling group in the territory of the Protoss. We have also started cleaning up immediately, and we will share the next information about the mimicry magic equipment with you. I'm grateful. If the surveillance of the Protoss territory becomes stricter, they are likely to transfer their base back to the two human countries. We will also always pay attention to the trends in this regard. Teacher Letica, who had completed the negotiation on behalf of the gods, gave the right to speak to Ica again. The alliance between the two races is only part of the talks. Pope Sethis' main target this time is Ica. Then there are you. Some time ago, perhaps because of the obstruction of the Nemesis Society, the intelligence agency of the Bes Empire has completely collapsed. This is also the reason why the frontline battle situation has become so chaotic now. I think maybe it is this war. The longer it takes, the better it is for them. After all, endless war can fully consume human beings' vitality, help them move more freely, and can also collect the data they say about the heart. To put it simply, do you want us to contact the Tiburai kingdom as soon as possible to relieve their wariness about us and gain their support? In other words, contacting the Tiburai kingdom as soon as possible is also to end this war early. You don't want this war to continue forever, right? Although this was said to everyone, Sethi's eyes were obviously not looking at Aika, but at Lanming beside him. The person who needs to make the most determination here is her, and everyone present is working hard for her at this moment. Of course, if you ask Lanming whether she has made up her mind to carry out this struggle to the end, her answer goes without saying. We will also send the Holy Sea Knights to the Tiburai kingdom to assist you. Please feel free to arrange your personnel there. Sir Seth, I have one more request. Oh. Seth's interest was piqued by Ika's possible request at such a time. Now, my sister is also in the Nemesis Society. You should have met her. Oh, is this the child from that time? That's it? As if he instantly saw through the second purpose of Ika's action, Sethi smiled meaningfully. But Ika had to put down her dignity and ask for help from the Holy See, which was powerful in the human realm. If you find her, please do not take action against her. Please inform me as soon as possible and I will handle it personally. Of course. She is also of great significance to us. If we find information about her while investigating the Nemesis Society, we will not hide it from you depending on the situation. There is no problem with that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to trouble you. In order to get any information related to Lolo, Ika lowered his head to Sethi's for the first time. Well, Lord Saint, Lord Child, and Her Royal Highness the Queen of the God Clan, we still have a lot of work to arrange for our alliance. I'll excuse you now. Sethi's bowed slightly, and his figure disappeared from the PDA screen. The long meeting was finally over, and everyone probably breathed a sigh of relief. Only Anili, who was always calm and composed, asked Ika questions after Thetis. So, descendants of the Kin's family, what are your plans next? The eyes of others also fell on Ika. Even if he said, let's leave for the Tiburai kingdom now, probably no one would object to him. But Ika was not carried away by the sudden influx of intelligence. I still need to learn more about what the mimicry magic equipment is, otherwise I still don't know how to deal with it when I get there. It just so happens that Philae has collected so many samples here, it doesn't matter if you use it a little, right? Anyway, no one can use it. You are willing to help me deal with it? It is a big help. After you use it, help me destroy it all. Remember to destroy it thoroughly. Give all those things away, I don't care about you. There are still a lot of things waiting for me on the ship, and I should be there for the rest of the time. Her trial questions have come to an end, and she probably won't want to deal with the mimicry magic costume again in a short time. Now that Her Majesty the Queen has been found wandering outside, she only needs to finally cooperate with the Protoss investigation team to clean up the remnants of the smuggling group in the Protoss territory, and another trial question has been successfully completed. In this way, Philae ended the 2 trials assigned to her by the gods, and also met the conditions for inheriting the vampire family. Calculating the time she spent away from her hometown, it was far longer than the 2 years that Ruby joined the Sea Mist Fleet. What thoughts does Philly have about the Sea Mist Fleet that cannot be brought back home? At least she hasn't mentioned it yet. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 403. Race Against Time. After the 3-party meeting ended, Ika dived into the research room of the gods and began to analyze the mimicry magic equipment that Philae left for him. Unique, who knows a little bit about magic technology, and Anili, who proposed the concept of magic technology, also followed Ika to visit this small research room. You alone may not be enough to understand the mixing technique. If you have Kokina's half and half ability, you may be able to see something. I will also be there to guide you. If Anili wants to go, I will go too. You can't do anything even if you're by my side. Is Anili just looking for an opportunity to abandon me? I don't want to go back alone. Anili also wants to go back with me. In this way, two legendary figures also entered the research room 100 years later. These two otherworldly beauties also completely attracted the attention of the researchers from the Protoss along the way. In fact, although the original purpose of the two was to help Ica analyze the mimicry magic equipment, Anili spent more time being led into the rhythm by Unico, who was idle and bored talking. So my body is now frozen in the passage of time, so whether it's on the surface or inside, the magic there is wrong. Don't use the molecular power furnace to understand it. Adjust position 1 to 3, give it a try and see if it can stimulate matter waves. Then is Anili's body kept underground in the imperial capital or something? How can I remove the magic? The magic concubine who freezes time is not very clear. It is the magic weapon ability of a certain big shot in Shimizuki Academy. Since in this era it is possible to convert the concubine's thoughts into electronic spells, it should not be possible to develop similar dispelling magic. A very difficult job. Hey, what are you doing? If you don't correct the measurement interference first to cause quantum interference, even the medium that allows me to appear will be involved. Sorry. Isn't this wrong? You just said that you would switch from position 1 to position 3. That's not the third position I'm talking about. I see, the theory of magic mechanics has also changed with the concept of magic technology. Anili left Unique aside and dragged her long skirt to Ica's side. The jam here is not like this. Assuming that this thing really has the same core as the molecular power furnace theory, the magic power will spread rapidly inside through this gap, and even disrupt the magic power that makes up the magic circle, causing a reversal effect. Anili's hands cannot directly touch real objects, so Ica combined her words and the direction of her fingers to understand, and modified the debugging method bit by bit. What came out of Anili's mouth was the original magic mechanical theory, which was integrated with the pure magic concept before today's electronic magic. It gave up convenience while paying more attention to practicality. This is knowledge that cannot be learned from today's magic mechanics. Some parts even completely subvert the concepts in the textbooks, making Ica feel like he has entered a new world. Then here, this structural component seems to be the core area of light fiber. It is indeed something that cannot be explained by simple magic technology. Unique, don't sit there doing nothing anymore, come and take a look. What's wrong? Has the time finally come when you need me? Unique, who likes to sit on high places and sway her legs, jumped down from the workbench that was not in use for the time being, ran to Ica, squeezed under his elbows and into his arms. Unique, what are you doing? Anili suddenly raised her voice, I want you to come and see this mimicry magic costume, not to sit on Ica's body. Huh? But you can see it more clearly this way, right? Unique ignored the blushing Anili who was waving her hands, and her petite body nimbly climbed up Ica's legs and sat down in front of him. The fluttering feather turban and the fragrant hair passed by the tip of Ica's nose, and Ica quickly focused all her energy on the work at hand. Sitting between Ica's legs, Unique's little head only slightly touches Ica's chin, not blocking his sight. Her slender body wrapped in crimson feathers also feels as good as it looks. Incredibly light. If the bystanders were not told that she was the legendary god girl who had gone through the bloody cross-border war, there would be no problem in treating her as a human girl next door who is 14 or 15 years old. Anili, do you want to sit on it too? Unique completely ignored Ica's thoughts and deliberately moved to the side, patting the little vacant space with her hand. How is it possible for me to look like this? No, now is the time to do business. But this child is the descendant of that man at that time, right? I feel like the two of them look very similar. Didn't you have any thoughts about projecting that man's figure onto him? What are you talking about? Anyway, Yunikoru, hurry up and get away from Ika. Did you really not notice that he is troubled? Is Ika troubled? I don't mind that much. You see. Even though Anili is just standing here in an illusory form now, it seems that she can feel that the surrounding temperature has begun to rise sharply due to her presence. Now, Anili is like a young girl in love, her face is flushed and she is waving her 12 light long sleeves. The sleeves fluttering in the air penetrated the workbench. If Anili had an entity, she would have swept down all the tools on the workbench by now, and she was too busy arguing with Unique to notice it at all. Caught between the two of them, Ika could only try to use the muscles on her face to force out a smile. But something that Unique just mentioned caught Ika's attention again. He had wanted to ask Anili this question for a long time. By the way, Anili, you always compared me to someone before. Is that person the ancestor of our family? Unili's movements stopped momentarily, then she crossed her hands in front of her chest and her eyes drifted into the distance. Forget it, I guess, I have some friendship with your great-great-great-grandfather. In this case, I have to take a closer look at what the descendants who inherit his bloodline are capable of. I see, I'm really sorry to disappoint you, ha ha ha. In this way, Ika could finally explain who Anili would occasionally let slip when she was angry with herself. By the way, Anili always compares me to my great-great-great-grandfather when he is angry. Does it mean that he often made you angry in the past? Or is he just a terrible person? Let's just say. He is a very bad person. He is a playboy, and he wants to hook up with any girl. You are a man who looks like a scumbag, but you still took the bait, Unili. What are you talking about? That was all 100 years ago. Is your memory confused? Anili and Unique looked at each other with sneers without admitting defeat, but Ika, who was watching, roughly guessed what was going on. Could it be that Anili? This is the past buried 100 years ago, so Ika naturally doesn't know what the truth is. But to say that Lan Ming's great-great-great-grandmother once liked his great-great-great-grandfather would feel like telling a fairy tale. If Anili had been more proactive at that time, you might be the prince of the human country now, Ika. Unique. Anili's comfortable posture finally completely collapsed. She seemed to have forgotten that she was now unable to touch any object in reality, and stretched out her hand as if she was about to wrestle with Unique. And Ika also forgot something important because of Anili's sudden rampage. You know, Ika's PDA is also controlled by my own magic power. If he treats Unique as a touchable object in his consciousness, Anili will be given a physical form at this time. Dingling ling 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 papa cracking cracks. Along with the various tools on the tool table, Anili stretched out her hands and pushed Unique, who was sitting on his legs, to Ika, and the three of them twisted into a ball on the ground. The only ones who could come into contact with each other were Ika and Anili. Unique, who was originally the target of Anili, was only involved in it and fell to the ground together. Who would have thought that the two legendary beautiful girls who ended the cross-border war are now wrestling in a mess on the ground in disheveled clothes, and the real reason is because of the topic of love 100 years ago. If humans or gods were to see the scene with their own eyes, the faith they had accumulated in the past might collapse in an instant. Brother, there are also the young ladies and the saintly ladies. It's lunchtime. As luck would have it, Ruby burst into the scene holding a small basket that probably contained lunch. Witnessing this scene, Ruby seemed to have a clang sound effect all over her body, and she was petrified on the spot. Probably because Ika once encouraged Ruby to be a strong child, her worldview barely collapsed due to this chaotic scene. She put down the small basket in her hand, tried her best to walk backwards with a sweet smile mixed with thousands of emotions, and prepared to leave the room quietly. Excuse me. It was amazing that he could say hello politely before leaving. If teacher Letica knew that her sister had become such a strong child, she would definitely be moved to tears. Of course, it's more likely to be crying for other reasons. The so-called strongness refers to the power to be able to accept all kinds of incredible realities regardless of self-deception. And it was Ika who first thought that he could not let the only witness go, because he was strong enough to completely ignore any incredible accidents around him, and eliminate any signs of attack on him in the bud. He used quick yet gentle movements to move Unique, who was lying on top of him, and then returned Inili's body to the phantom state. Finally, he quickly stood up and took a quick step to block Ruby, who was about to exit the door. The whole process takes no more than 2 seconds. This is the so-called practice makes perfect, a magical skill that Ika has mastered after traveling through countless Shuro fields. Because the speed was too fast, Ruby hadn't reacted yet. Probably because he mistakenly thought that Ika was going to do what he did to the two distinguished adults on himself. The smile that he tried hard to squeeze out on his cute face finally collapsed. I'm sorry, I'm bothering you three. But, I don't have experience in doing such a drastic thing all of a sudden, so I'm saying, ugh. Ignoring Ruby, who finally became incoherent in her speech, Ika first reached out and closed the door behind Ruby without leaking any news. So in all this, apart from the three parties involved, only the poor witnesses are left to deal with. Hearing the only escape route behind her being blocked with a click, Ruby's waist softened in despair, and she slid to the floor with her back against the door. I'm sorry, Ruby, for scaring you. It was just a habitual movement of the body, but she didn't expect that Ruby would be so frightened. It probably left an impression in her heart that will be difficult to overwrite for the rest of her life. What you saw just now was just an accident. Although this explanation may be too pale and feeble, but if you ask whether it is useful, it is more or less useful. Ruby, who was trying her best not to cry, blinked her big watery eyes blankly after Ika finished saying this. I don't know if she believed Ika's explanation, but it was gratifying to at least be able to listen to the sentence. Aren't you going to do something weird? If I could do something strange to those two adults, millions of people from the human and divine races combined might not let me go. After a moment of imagination, he really did what Ruby imagined and what he would face next. Although he might have no regrets in this life, the price he paid seemed too heavy. Ika took Ruby's little hand and pulled her to stand up from the floor. Although Ruby's little hands were still shaking a little, she did not move away when Ika held her. Instead, she closed her fingers and held Ika's hand. Inili, the chair is broken. Shut up. Inili, who had recovered her spirit state, could not do anything else to Unique. She just glared at her fiercely. It is impossible for a chair made of steel to break simply because of the pushing and rubbing. It may be that Unique has done something to it. The broken chair legs are very smooth. That's right, it's because the chair broke just now that we fell together. Inili originally wanted to reach out to hold us, but her body couldn't touch us now, so she fell together with us. With the help of the good excuse created by Unique, Ika finally dispelled Ruby's remaining suspicion and took her little hand to the workbench where most of the equipment had been lost. Inili and Unique also ended the Cold War. They gathered around inadvertently. Is it time for lunch already? There is no time display tool anywhere in this laboratory, and the only PDA that can be used to tell the time is occupied by Inili. The three people who were having fun after work had no idea how long they had been here. Yes, Oni-sama has already gone to the restaurant to dine with everyone. Then you brought us lunch. Thank you for your hard work, Ruby. Why don't you go back and join them? Opening the small basket Ruby placed on the corner of the workbench, there were small and exquisite sandwiches placed on the mezzanine inside. If the tiering is based on the number of people, then there are 3 people here. Inili is in a phantom state. Although I'm sorry for her, she neither needs nor can she have lunch with everyone. I will stay here and will not go back. Ruby, who was squirming, raised her head slightly and looked up at Ika. I see, so this is for 3 people. Because Oni-sama said that my eldest brother is very busy with research, I made this sandwich that is very convenient to eat. Did Ruby make this herself? Yes, it is. That's awesome, thank you. The sandwich is just right. After immersed in research for such a long time, Aika now also wants to eat some simple food to fill her stomach. Well, am I really not going to disturb the three of you here? If you mean the kind of interruption just now, you shouldn't have anything to worry about, right? It's not about disturbing things like that. Thinking of the gaffe just now, Ruby's face suddenly turned pink. It's because I'm worried about disturbing Big Brother's research. Of course there is nothing to worry about. Aika looked at each other and smiled at Anili and Unique behind her. Then let's go outside to eat. The research room is not a place where you can have a peaceful meal. Aika picked up the small basket Ruby put down. And this is lunch made by Ruby herself, so I don't care about anything. Enjoy the image. I also agreed to go out and take a breather. I used to look at the machines in the underground of the Imperial City Defense Bureau every day, but I finally came to the Protoss territory and got into this narrow research room. Anili stretched. Originally, wearing a costume like 12 singles was not suitable for such a big move, but after Ruby saw that rude behavior just now, she seems to have given up on maintaining the majesty of a saint, and just wants to cry like an ordinary girl. Cry, laugh if you want. Little Queen, are there any recommended places in this palace? I have never been here before, and I don't know of any good places with beautiful scenery. Yes, Lord Young Girl, there are many, many recommended places. Being asked by the legendary childish lady in person, Ruby replied in a panic. Her immature but endearing look made the three of them laugh. However, the person involved, Ruby, still didn't know why she had changed. Like this. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 404. They chose a place only a few dozen steps away from the research room, located on a slightly higher lawn in the palace courtyard. The wind is sunny and the colorful sunshine shines on the green grass. The breeze in June and the fragrance of the garden plants blow on the cheeks and hair, carrying all the physical and mental fatigue far away. Ruby spread the tablecloth prepared in the small basket on the soft grass, just enough for 4 people to sit together. It tastes very good. Although I have never tasted this kind of taste at home or at Shigetsuki Academy, it's delicious. Thanks. Ruby smiled humbly and took a small bite of the tip of the sandwich. She seems to like to eat the sandwich from the tip and chew it slowly in her mouth for a long time, like a lazy hamster. Maybe it's because he has a small appetite, so he takes his time while eating. Unique was chatting with Anili, who couldn't enjoy the delicious food while eating, which perfectly complemented Ruby and Aika, who didn't like to talk much during the meal, adding a completely different lively atmosphere to everyone. Aika, on the other hand, quietly watched Ruby slowly eating a sandwich, enjoying the warm sunshine at noon. He propped up his back with both hands and looked up at the sky. The midday sun in early summer appeared extremely soft under the influence of the colorful barrier, which made Aika, who was used to estimating time based on sunlight, lose his correct judgment. As he thought about it, waves of drowsiness kept coming to Aika's mind. Aika opened her eyes again and saw Ruby's sleeping face with her head lowered, facing her. The side face reflected by the setting sun was sleeping quietly, and the back of his head was resting on his very soft legs. This posture made Aika realize that she had fallen asleep with Ruby's legs like this since she didn't know when. Judging by the sky, it's probably evening now. While he was enjoying the comfortable lap pillow that no matter whether he was awake or asleep, he would indulge in it, Ruby also dozed off with him. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, Aika couldn't help but reach out and tease her, gently pulling her cheeks left and right. It's so soft. After doing this once, Aika had no chance to continue. Because that little movement just now seemed to have disturbed Ruby's clear dream. Drowsily opening her tear-covered eyes, Ruby looked at Aika, who was lying on her back on her legs. She quickly sat up straight, her body that had been shaky until just now. "You've woken up, big brother. Now that you've woken up, just call me. Sorry to trouble you, I seem to have slept for a long time." "Nothing, no trouble." Now that Ruby had woken up, Aika sat up as well, ending the dreamlike comfort of the lap pillow. It was still the grass where he had lunched a few hours ago, with the checkered napkin beneath him and the little basket for sandwiches still in its original place. There were just 2 fewer people than there were a few hours ago. Where are Anili and Unique? The young lady and the holy lady are going back first. The young lady seems to want to continue to complete the research left by the elder brother under the guidance of the holy lady. Yet, Anili and Unique were good partners during the cross-border war, and now they are just recreating the scene from that time. Aika originally wanted to go back as soon as possible to complete the remaining projects, but now she was hesitant about disturbing the time the two of them spent alone together. "Okay, let's go back too." After thinking about it, Aika chose not to disturb the two of them. "Ruby, where are these things going to be sent back?" "Hey, I found this from my room. If you put it back in the kitchen, someone will clean it up." She stared at Aika with her big blinking eyes, as if asking him where he wanted to return now. "I'll take you back. I won't go to the research room now. With Anili and Unique there, the progress will definitely be much faster than if I did it myself." Hearing what Aika said, Ruby immediately understood Aika's kindness. She showed a comforting smile and prepared to stand up, but her body shook involuntarily. Aika quickly grabbed her arm and held her waist with the other hand to prevent her from falling. When he suddenly pulled her so close that they could feel each other's breath, Ruby's ears turned red. "I'm sorry, is it because I couldn't stand upright after sleeping for so long? It feels a little numb, but it should get better after a while." Ruby stood up with Aika's arm and smiled sheepishly. "This is my first time doing this for a boy. Kind of thing. It's such an honor to be able to be Ruby's first." No, I'm the one, I'm honored." As expected, Ruby's panicked look as she shook her head desperately was also very cute. The two continued to sit on the grass for a while, during which time Ruby talked about some little stories that only teacher Letica and herself knew. After Ruby's legs no longer felt numb, the two returned to the palace where everyone was before nightfall completely fell. Throughout the whole day today, in addition to Aika and the three of them who were fighting in the research room, Kara Little had readjusted the allocation of investigators to clean up the smuggling syndicates in the Protoss territory. This was also the first task after Instructor Letica took office. Take full responsibility for big events. After Aika washed away her fatigue comfortably in the bathhouse, she saw Charlotte and Anja waiting at the door of her room. They came to convey the conclusion they reached after discussing with Lan Ming for a long time today. Charlotte is a nobleman who was abducted by an unknown organization and whose whereabouts are unknown, and Anja is the former maid sent back to her hometown by Augustus. They are not yet listed as wanted objects. Because of the current severe situation in the Bis Empire, the two of them could not appear in public. If they were targeted by the Bis Empire, there would be many disadvantages, so they decided to stay in the God Clan to assist in the investigation of the mimicry magic equipment smuggling group. Because now you do have the ability to call yourself a knight, I agree to hand over the princess to you. The princess also thinks that you are here." Charlotte put his fist on Aika's chest, "But you must remember that I am the real knight of Her Highness the Princess. So before I come back, you must protect Her Highness the Princess and return it to me intact. Miss Charlotte and I will take over for you to complete the search mission on the Protoss side. The Holy See has proposed a joint search, and we humans should also have people to connect with you. After completing these tasks, we will work hard to bring you back from the Protoss." "Assistance? Anja and Charlotte bowed their heads to Ika in the end, and this was their farewell in less than a few minutes. The departure date from the Protoss territory was set for 2 days, and Lan Ming had already made most of the arrangements while Ika was immersed in the research room today. Charlotte and Anja have confirmed that they will stay in the territory of the gods to continue investigating the remnants of the smuggling group. Lilu followed the Sea Mist fleet back to Frost Moon Academy, while the remaining people set off for the Tiburai Kingdom. After 3 days were left for Ika to analyze the mimic magic equipment, he, with the help of Anili and Unique, successfully analyzed the signal path for the data transmission of the mimic magic equipment. Data transmission of the mimicry magic equipment? In that case, can we find where the data they collected was finally received? This is a discovery of great significance. With this technology, we can follow the clues to find the lair of the factory and give them a fatal blow. What is certain now is that large quantities of mimicry magic equipment are popular on the front-line battlefields of the Kingdom of Tiburai, which means that the data is concentrated somewhere in the human country. Whether this is true can only be verified by returning to the human country. The materials here are not yet capable of making a magic machine that can track data flow, so I want to ask Professor Coconut to make it after I go back. With such results and careful arrangements, it has laid solid confidence for the escapees to embark on the journey again. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 405. Finally the day came when we planned to leave the territory of the gods. Ika summoned the Ancient Heritage, a super-large aviation magic ship at Tasi Kong's waiting port. Mechanical Alchemy Yggdrasil. Silver's aviation magic ship appeared in the Protoss waiting port. So far, except for Ika and the others, no one else has seen its body. Even the Sea Mist fleet has only detected the signal it sent. And when this silver-white majesty appeared in front of the public, everyone was moved by it. In comparison, even Tasi Kong, whom the gods are proud of, seems lacking in momentum. Brother. Ruby tried not to cry. Because teacher Letica didn't cry, she sent everyone off with a smile. You must come back safely. Now that you leave, I guess you won't come back here again within a few weeks. Carolil and Ika fist bumped each other, but don't worry, we've finished dealing with the gods' territory. After the troubles, you will be free. You will definitely not be at peace in the Tiburai Kingdom. When you encounter any problems that cannot be solved, let us make a grand appearance. It won't happen at that time. But if you really encounter a situation where you have to come to the rescue, just think that I didn't say this at this time. By the way, Anili can contact me. As long as that PDA passes through Anili, it can ignore any magic signals and use the core of light to connect to me. Unique put her hands behind her head, still looking as carefree as ever. Probably in the eyes of young adults who have experienced countless storms and waves, this kind of war is equivalent to children playing house. Actually, Unique told me before that she wants to go to the Tiburai Kingdom with you. Although Unique's ability does not need to be questioned, I think it will definitely cause more trouble than help. So there was no consent. Well, I don't want to go. Who knows what method Anili used to give up Unique's idea of setting off with everyone. But it seems that this will only be a short separation, so Unico will obediently let go of her best friend who has only been able to see each other for 100 years. Classmate Ika, classmate Ling, classmate Wuxi. Finally, Instructor Letica came up and called the students who had been with him for nearly a year in turn. You are all my best students and you are worthy of relying on me, friends. I believe you will be able to overcome all obstacles and return to Frost Moon Academy. Then she turned to Lan Ming. Classmate Lan Ming, although you have not been in the twin class for more than a week, you are still one of my students. No matter what, you must return to Shiyu Academy to attend classes. Do you understand? I will obey my teacher's orders. Lan Ming deliberately changed the farewell atmosphere with a touch of sadness with a serious thank you at this time. She raised her skirt and made an oath to teacher Letica and everyone present. Lanming Ila will definitely return with the banner of victory, please wait for the good news. After handling the official affairs of the Protoss, I will return to Frost Moon Academy. Although Frost Moon Academy is absolutely neutral, it is absolutely impossible for Principal Phyllis to let Frost Moon Academy students take risks outside the academy. I will do my best to help you. The same goes for us. Feli and the children on the Highway fleet also came to the waiting port to see everyone off. The children who were usually noisy were silent today. Ika and the children spent precious time at sea, and they were already very special visitors to the Sea Mist fleet, which rarely received visits from outsiders. Especially Zio, who has always been very active, unexpectedly stood quietly among the children today. Ruby patted her head gently, but she just shook her head vigorously and didn't seem to have any particular words for them. Perhaps the words spoken at this time are words that should not be said at this time. They are words to try to retain everyone and may shake the firm determination. Although Feli's 2 trials have been completed, she has said not long ago that she will not disband the Sea Mist fleet for the time being, because if it is disbanded, these homeless children will lose their place to stay. At least, she won't let go of the Sea Mist fleet until she finds a suitable place to put the children. In this regard, Teacher Letica did not refuse to continue to lend the Ocean Fleet, which was an asset of the gods, to Feli's command. Under everyone's eager gaze, Ika and his party climbed up the stairs entwined with ivy. At this time, Ika suddenly looked in the direction of the Yuktra Hill ship. "What's wrong, Ika? I just saw someone's shadow from the window. Is this an aviation-guided ship? How is it possible? This is an ancient relic constructed from the magic of mechanical alchemy, and it is a super-large aviation-guided ship that only Ika can drive. It is impossible for anyone to set foot on this Steel Eagle earlier than him. Maybe I'm dazzled." At that time, I had just turned my gaze, and what looked like a human figure just passed by the window of the ship. When I looked carefully, it had completely disappeared. If it weren't for my own eyesight, it might be the reflections of birds and beasts flying high in the sky on the window. Until the moment the cabin door closed, everyone was waving goodbye to each other. The ancient molecular power furnace of Yuktra Hill began to operate silently, and the silver-white Steel Eagle carried the escapees into the sky of freedom. Perhaps from this moment on, their identity is no longer escapees, but liberators. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 406. Lanming adjusted the ancient control panel and set Yuktra Hill into an automatic navigation mode heading towards the kingdom of Tiburai according to the direction indicated by the direction finder. Everyone is now standing in front of the window of the cab, looking at the distant territory of the gods. It feels like time flies by so fast. Because during this period, there are probably more happy things than painful things. If all were painful things, it would be difficult to hold on to the same period of time. Ling's perspective on problems was always so tricky, but Ika had to admit that her accusations hit the target every time. Among the 7 people carried by Yutrashal when it first set off, Lilu now stayed in the Sea Mist fleet, and Charlotte, Anja, and Teacher Letica stayed in the Protoss territory. They suddenly felt noble and spacious. The cabin suddenly became empty. Everyone has a deep or shallow feeling of reluctance in their hearts, but no one has ever said it out loud. Because if you say it out loud, this negative emotion will spread like poison. In this case, it is better to bury it deep in your heart and make it a precious thing that only you can recall. After remembering the past for a moment, Ika turned to face the 3 girls. When we approach the kingdom of Tiburai, we need to bypass the front line where the war is ongoing. We try to avoid being discovered by the Bis Empire and enter the kingdom of Tiburai, and then go directly to the royal capital to meet with their king. The Holy See has made arrangements. In order to help Ika and the others enter the unfamiliar Tiburai kingdom, Pope Sethis has sent a secret envoy to the Tiburai kingdom to contact the king. The war started without any explanation of the situation. The king, who was also at a loss, was naturally happy to discuss with Lan Ming how to end this tragedy caused by misunderstanding. In this way, the Holy See is equivalent to opening the door to the Tiberai kingdom for Ika and others. The road ahead has been paved, now we just need to move forward step by step according to the discussed plan. The Holy See Knight they will send over there is the Liuyan we are all familiar with. Wei 11 was obviously relieved when she heard Liu Yin's name among the other party. Suddenly knowing that she had to act together with her original colleagues again, Wei 11 was more or less at a loss as to what to do. Although they are not strangers, they have even been together for a long time before that. But after all, he left without saying goodbye. When he saw them again, he didn't know what attitude he should use to face them. If Liu Yin was also by Wei 11's side, this indescribable tension should be slightly relieved. There is another person, Oliver. Wei 11, you should know her, right? Well. Wei 11 nodded obediently. Oliver is also a person with a strong head and body among the Blue Knights. The brain and body are both powerful. Hearing the way Wei 11 described the knight in blue who had never been masked before, Lan Ming couldn't help but laugh, half covering his mouth. Wei 11 immediately realized that her explanation was too naive and taken for granted, and she blushed and added gestures to explain. That kind of person has a very smart mind and quick reactions, but when fighting, he is as neat as Xiaoyan. Although he doesn't often use magic, his swordsmanship level may be similar to that of Sister Ling. I really want to pay a visit to such a master. Even people like Ling, who didn't care much about how powerful the Holy See's Blue Knights were, became interested in the swordsman Wei 11 described. There are only so many things to explain now. After Ika finished speaking, he let everyone freely arrange the remaining time. The first suggestion was to go back to the room and have a good rest. From the territory of the gods to the vicinity of the kingdom of Tiberai, based on the comparison and estimation of the time the sea mist fleet sailed on the sea, it would take up to 2 days for Yggdrasil to advance at an average speed. After entering the Tiberai kingdom, there is not much time to spend leisurely like this. So Ika wants everyone to make good use of this precious time to rest peacefully and regroup. The allocation of rooms does not need to be rearranged. There are enough empty rooms in the Yggdrasil living area. It is not an exaggeration to compare the super-large aviation magic ship to a mobile flying hotel. I didn't notice when Wei 11 could sleep alone, so she was given a separate room, just opposite Ling's room, and next door to Lan Ming's room. The 3 girls' rooms were separated from Ika by 2 empty rooms as a matter of course. On the way back to his room, Ika began to try his best to achieve a state of stillness in his heart, and all worries did not exist at this moment. What he hopes most now is to lie in bed and close his eyes and fall into a deep sleep. Opening the door, the plainly decorated private space immediately brought an endless sense of peace of mind to Ika, who was completely relaxed. That doesn't seem to be the case. A girl in a crimson kimono stood in the center of the room as if she had been waiting for a long time. In her arms she held the red paper umbrella she usually held. Of course, Ika was speechless at this moment. What he wanted to know most was whether what he was seeing with his eyes was reality or an illusion caused by exhaustion. The sounds of their approaching footsteps and conversations came from behind, but Ika was still standing blankly behind the open door of the room. The girl with pink hair tied into soft twin tails looked past Ika and towards the open door behind him. The door closed quietly without any external force, making an imperceptible locking sound. After doing all this in a short period of time, the Japanese-style girl could not feel either joy or sadness. Hitomi, Ika's contracted magic outfit, silently held the closed paper umbrella in her hands and stared at her own eyes silently. Owner. This is the unquestionable real world, not the colorful fantasy world in the limited spiritual world. If he had been standing here like this wondering whether the vision before him was an illusion, Hitomi would definitely hold the red umbrella in his arms and remain motionless. The two of them might be able to stare at each other until the dawn of tomorrow. So Aika spoke first and asked a question that he later thought was very stupid in retrospect. This shouldn't be a dream, right, Hitomi? When Aika spoke, Hitomi blinked her half-opened eyes under her smooth bangs, seemingly reacting to Aika's words with anticipation. Of course, there seems to be expectation is just Aika's unauthorized interpretation of the emotion. In fact, Hitomi did not show any corresponding expectations, but simply had a slight reaction to show that she was not a doll. After listening to this question, although it was silly, it was also the question that Aika was most concerned about. Hitomi neither showed any expression of regret, nor turned her head away if she didn't want to answer. She just spoke as if there were no waves in the water. Tone solves this problem. Stupid question. It was a simple and clear answer that could decipher a lot of information. This answer made Aika finally feel relieved. In that case, the figure I just saw at the window was you, right? When saying goodbye to everyone from the God clan, the figure Aika inadvertently glimpsed seemed to be observing their every move by the window, but after noticing Aika's sight, he immediately disappeared without a trace. Hitomi nodded. When faced with questions that do not require an answer, she seems to use this subtle movement to express. As Aika stepped closer to her, Hitomi also raised her head and stared at him, who stopped and stood a step or two in front of her. The jewel-like pupils are full of light, and it is impossible to see what kind of emotion is hidden in them. This is not the first time Aika has met face to face with Hitomi. This time he was calmer than the previous two unexpected encounters. He casually extended his hand to Hitomi. Hitomi's body and eyes did not dodge, but she seemed to have forgotten to blink, waiting for Aika's hand to touch her. Then, his broad and strong hands gently rubbed Hitomi's hair, which felt as soft as fluffy cotton. Even though Aika touched her head without permission, Hitomi didn't show any special expression. After just a few seconds, she slightly looked away from Aika's arm. And through this small movement that was like verbal communication, Aika really felt that Hitomi was standing in front of her without a doubt, and everything about her was extremely real. Great, you are finally willing to come to this world. Before Hitomi appeared in front of him, Aika even suspected that it was just his wishful thinking that Hitomi could come to the real world. You should know, right? I have always hoped that you could come out of that world. Not only me, Ling and the others also want to know you very much. Hitomi shook her head slightly from side to side, and Aika was a little surprised by how quickly she reacted this time. I'm just responding to the master's wish. I just want you to see it. I'm very happy when you say that. How should I put it? Although it is the first time in this world to talk face to face like this, it shouldn't be considered the first time we met, right? But why is it at this time? After living together with Hitomi for more than 10 years and fighting side by side for nearly a year, Hitomi has never appeared in this world in response to his feelings. But this time, she appeared without warning on this aviation magic ship built with her own abilities. Or are there any special restrictions for you to come here? For example, you can only move freely within the scope of your abilities or something. Hitomi shook her head back and forth again, probably denying Aika's random guess. She changed the closed red umbrella in her hand to hold it with one hand, and gently placed her other hand on Aika's belly. Not understanding the reason for her doing this, and it didn't seem like a follow-up answer to the guess she just made, Aika was a little confused. Hitomi. Just as Aika shouted, Hitomi removed her hand from his body. The time it took to touch Aika's body was only a few seconds. Repeat what you just did to me. Just now. Aika reacted to Hitomi's simple reminder. The first thing he did after seeing Hitomi was to touch her head. That was just a confirmation of whether she really existed here. Since Hitomi explained it this way, the seemingly unclear little action just now should also contain this meaning, right? My master talks to himself less often to me. That's not talking to yourself. I know you're listening, so it doesn't count as talking to yourself. It was rare for Aika to refute Hitomi with a blushing face, which meant that when he recalled his behavior, even he felt that he was a weirdo who was paranoid about Hitomi. But after hearing what Hitomi said, Ika realized that except for the brief exchange with Hitomi during the battle, he was too busy to discuss other matters directly with the people around him. He gradually ignored her without realizing it, and he didn't realize it until she reminded him in a roundabout way. Hitomi wasn't teasing Ika, maybe she just came to the owner to complain directly because she couldn't bear the loneliness of being left out. Moreover, I saw my master do many things that are unbelievable for a human being. Huh? What does this mean? How should I understand this sentence? Ika can't understand what something incredible as a human being is for Hitomi. Talking about the limits of human beings, the scenes of fighting side by side with Hitomi came to Ika's mind. Are you talking about the battle between us and the mimic magic equipment? In fact, I still think that it is like a miracle that we won. But with your help and the hard work of Ling and Guanyanjian, we can. Winning is probably the inevitable result. After the master indulged his desires and had an unclean relationship with his sister and the ambiguous magic suit, he also had sex with the holder of the light flame sword. After that night, his relationship with the woman became very good. The saint and the childish, the woman's attitude is also very unusual. Even my first holder was not so shameless. She raised the sleeves of her kimono to cover half of her face, and finished speaking such a long sentence at a slightly fast pace. Her slightly narrowed eyes seemed to be full of contempt. I finally know what Hitomi meant by something that is incredible for a human being. Have you seen everything? It is impossible for Ika to lie to Hitomi, who is of the same mind. Even if there is a misunderstanding in this case, it will be difficult to explain. At that time, it was just to respond to Ling's mood. I also thought about many issues. That's why I showed such an attitude. And when it comes to Ruby, Inili, and Unique, we just have a good relationship as friends. Hitomi's clear eyes seemed to be able to find loopholes in Ika's words at any time. At that time, she might have felt guilty because of the reason Hitomi said, so the excessive explanation seemed very suspicious. The first one, are you talking about the ancestors of the Chiz family who met Eniri, Unico, and the others during the cross-border war? Ika had just raised this question, and at this moment there was a sound of continuous knocking on the door. Ika, are you in there? The kitchen utensils here are different from ours. You should know how to use them, right? Ling's voice was accompanied by the clicking sound of the locked doorknob being turned repeatedly. Is it locked? Hello, Ika, are you in there? By the way, Hitomi, you just locked the door, right? Just as Ika was about to turn around and open the door for Ling, Hitomi suddenly came up to him and hugged him. This sudden movement caused Ika's body to naturally retreat, and finally hit the wall with nowhere to retreat. Ika's thoughts were half a beat slower than her body's movements. When he realized it, the slender body under the elegant kimono was already pressed against his own, and the soft hair gently tickled Ika's chin, sending out a refreshing fragrance. Don't want. The same slender and weak arms hugging Ika's body had fully conveyed Hitomi's mood of not wanting Ika to open the door to him. The knocking sounded a few more times during this time and then stopped. Ling probably thought that Ika was somewhere else now. The space in Yggdrasil was large and complicated, and it was not that simple to find someone from here. The real situation is that Ika was restrained in place by Hitomi's sudden embrace and could not leave at all. He did not make a sound to prevent the scene from developing into greater chaos. The moment the knocking on the door stopped, Hitomi also let go of Ika's waist. Don't you want others to see you? Ika asked Hitomi in as gentle a tone as possible. When they first met, Hitomi had already said that she was just here to see Ika, and that was probably what she meant. Hitomi held the red paper umbrella in her arms tightly with both hands. Because the master keeps saying he wants to see me. Because this is how I feel after knowing that you have been staying in that kind of place. I just want to take you out of that unchanging place. You should have confirmed it with my eyes, and the outside world isn't it more interesting than the spiritual world? Aika gently pressed Hitomi's shoulders with both hands. Her body, which was as fragile as glass, could only be treated gently. But after communicating with different people, this interesting feeling will become more obvious. You should be familiar with Wei 11 and Ling. They are all very kind people, so it shouldn't be that difficult for you. Someone you're dating, right? I don't know them. We should know Wei 11, right? Aika thinks that fear of strangers is not the main reason why Hitomi doesn't want to meet everyone. It may just be a simple reluctance, just like humans have a special dislike for certain foods for no reason. Hitomi, you are not only my partner, but also my sister. It is normal to want to introduce your family to everyone, right? Show off your sister's aura, probably like leave it to my sister. It feels like Hitomi must be able to do whatever she wants, right? Hitomi opened her eyes slightly to see if she had reacted to the word sister. When Aika said this in the spiritual world, she seemed to prefer the relationship of partner to sister. But doesn't she actually object to becoming a family member with him? Hitomi, who had returned to her original expression, quietly turned her head. With this small movement, Aika once again smelled the refreshing light floral fragrance before. Is that the smell of cherry blossoms? It's not the kind of fragrance that people will remember, but it has a very tranquil atmosphere, just like a watermark on white paper, that kind of graceful and lightness that seems invisible but tangible. There is also a tall cherry blossom tree in the courtyard of the caretaker's cabin, but it has not bloomed in nearly a year since living there, so Aika speculated this based on the beautiful scenery she saw in Hitomi's spiritual world. In the memory, the world where cherry blossoms bloomed in Hitomi was also filled with this light and elegant fragrance, as if Hitomi's figure was shown in another invisible and intangible form. When Hitomi was in this simple room at this moment, this elegance filled every corner. If I were the master's sister, the master should listen to the elders. This would reverse the relationship between master and slave. Don't worry about that indifferent master-slave relationship. As a sister, I will obey you obediently, and when fighting, you will do your best to help me. Is this the relationship between us? Hitomi seemed to be finally moved by Aika's remarks and didn't refute a word for a long time. Just now Ling seemed to be asking me how to use the kitchen utensils here. When we came here last time, we brought fast food bought from the commercial street in the neutral area. This will be the base of our activities, and we will definitely have to prepare it ourselves in the future just in time. This was a rare opportunity. Aika thought that Hitomi could smoothly integrate into everyone as a first meeting. Speaking of which, you told me directly in your mind about the driving method of this aviation magic ship. It should be good to teach them face to face this time, right? Hitomi lowered her head and looked at the tip of the red umbrella, seeming to be seriously considering Aika's proposal. And Aika let go of her shoulders and walked to the door, trying to turn the doorknob. As expected, the door could not be opened without Hitomi's consent. Just as Aika was about to turn back, he suddenly heard a sound like opening a lock coming from the door. Turning around, Hitomi was actively walking towards him. Are you mentally prepared? Am I the master's magic costume now, or am I Aika's sister? There is no conflict between these two identities, right? So I will introduce them all to everyone. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 407. When Aika came to the cooking room of Yutra Hill with the half-hearted Hitomi Suns Hung, the three virtuous girls were still sorting out the ingredients brought from the god's territory. Before leaving, Instructor Letica gave them all the supplies in the Protoss Palace as supplies. Aika. I haven't seen you for a few minutes, where did you come from? Seeing the Japanese-style girl walking into the cooking room with Aika pushing her shoulders, Lan Ming and Ling were speechless for a moment. Hitomi, who was exposed to everyone's gaze, seemed a little at a loss as her shoulders, which were gently grasped by Aika, twisted around reluctantly. The reason Aika did this was to prevent her from trying to escape like this. Only Wei 11, who had seen Hitomi twice in the spiritual world, made a sound of surprise. "It's Hitomi." She immediately put down what she was doing and trotted over to Hitomi's side and took her hand. Wei 11 was smiling broadly, apparently forgetting that she had been made to cry by Hitomi's deliberate ignorance when the three of them were in the same spiritual world. When Wei 11 held her hand, Tong's shoulders went from squirming about trying to escape to becoming much stiffer. Although her expression in front of everyone doesn't change much and she seems to be calm inside, in fact her body is very honest. Now that I have such close contact with her body, I can feel it even more. I've mentioned it to you before. She is my partner and the sister of me and Lugo, Hitomi. While Aika introduced everyone to the identity of Hitomi, who they met for the first time, she half pushed Hitomi's shoulders to make her take a few steps forward, then let go of her hand and let her stand in front of everyone. "Long time no see. It's exactly the same as in that world." "Certainly." Tong responded lightly to Wei 11's unexplained emotion. Tong, who was probably able to say these two words, had already tried very hard to pretend to be calm. After Aika and Hitomi met face to face for the first time, they told Ling and Lanming about Hitomi. At that time, it was to explore whether other magic equipment could communicate with each other like Hitomi. So now with Aika's brief introduction, everyone will know her identity. If you put it this way, she is just like the light flame sword. Hey, is this little girl the true form of mechanical alchemy? Ling and Lanming also came to Tong's side. Although not as friendly as Wei 11 when they first met, there was no sense of unfamiliarity that Aika expected. Speaking of which, Wei 11, who is the most shy among them, is so close to Hitomi, who has only met her a few times. Is it because they are both magic costumes and there is some element of mutual attraction? What I was about to say should be that people of the same sex repel each other, right? I'm Lanming Yila. Aika told us before that as long as he is around us, you will always look at us through him, right? Then sister, I don't need to introduce myself too much, all right? Lanming was the second one among them who quickly accepted Tong, and in a blink of an eye, she considered herself to be her sister. To say that Lanming's impression is indeed more in line with the mature charm of a sister. Finally, Ling also briefly introduced himself. In this case, we should meet more often. The light flame sword is the one from our family. You should know him, right? Hitomi nodded. As the center of the four people's attention, this answer indeed seemed the most natural, and it was also very consistent with Aika's impression of her. Okay, I brought her here to teach you how to use the kitchen utensils here. Isn't that why Ling came to me just now? By the way, there's this thing." As he said that, Ling narrowed his eyes as if he remembered something. "In that case, you were really in the room at that time, Aika." Hitomi was also in the room. "Are you inside? Why did you lock the door?" "Too careless." Although he has experienced so many Shuro fields, Aika still hasn't learned his lesson and will still leak things that should be hidden. Ling ignored Aika, who couldn't answer, and turned to Hitomi, who seemed to answer whatever he asked. At that time, Hitomi should also be with him, right? Facing Ling's question with a gentle smile, Hitomi nodded honestly. Only at this time, Aika hoped that she would not react at all as she seemed on the surface. Hitomi appeared suddenly at that time. She was not mentally prepared to meet you, and I was not mentally prepared either. As for Hitomi. Ling looked into Hitomi's eyes. Although I don't know what she is thinking in her heart, she does look like an ordinary girl. Since she is Aika's sister, you should keep an eye on him. This time, Ling simply didn't pursue the issue. Although men and women are alone together, Her attitude towards Hitomi and other girls is completely different. She seems to think that there will be no problem if she is with Hitomi. What kind of logic is this? Based on Ling's last words, I could guess that Hitomi was introduced to everyone as her sister before. She was regarded as a family member and enjoyed the privileges of the family, just like it was natural for her to stay with Lolo. I will hold him tight. Speaking of Sister Tong, why are you holding me back? Aren't you still a little resistant to the identity of sister? Why do you agree with Ling at this time? This put Aika in a very awkward position as the two girls talked about her face to face. Will Hitomi always be here? Wei 11, who was closest to her, asked this. She must also be looking forward to finding a magically dressed companion like herself who can live freely in the real world. I haven't asked her this question either. Hitomi, how are you? Aika also looked at Hitomi, who was gently shaking her fluffy pink twin tails. You can't fight if you stay outside. This time, she no longer used the rhetoric of consuming resources to avoid the problem. In Aika's opinion, maybe this is a good sign. Hey, this dress looks really nice. Can't it be customized? I want to wear it too. Hitomi's hair feels so comfortable. It's really hard to imagine that this child could be that guy's magic suit. As long as she doesn't tell us, she's just an ordinary cute girl. Well, Hitomi, can I touch your hair too? Seeing how the three girls were able to accept Hitomi happily, and how happy they were with each other, Aika felt that whether it was Hitomi or herself, the issues that she had been worried about seemed to be a bit too much. Wouldn't this be a good way to blend in? There should be no problem just leaving her alone. Aika turned around and was about to leave, because she didn't want to disturb the girls and didn't say hello to them. However, he forgot that even if she left the spiritual world, she could still easily detect Aika's every move. Hitomi immediately grabbed Aika's sleeve. Hitomi. She just neither spoke nor let go, and her crystal eyes seemed to show a pitiful look as if she had been abandoned. Well, if I stay here all the time, it will be a bit of a hindrance, right? It's true that people who can't help you are a bit of a hindrance, Ling said with half-opened eyes, but this is Hitomi's first time in this world, and it seems like she can't live without you for a while. Brother Aika, don't bring her here and just leave her here. You should stay here too. I have never cooked by myself, and now we are companions. As a princess, Lanming must have very few opportunities to cook with his own hands. This is not the same as Aika's inability to help. After all, Hitomi is also a girl like them. Perhaps everyone can read girls' minds better than themselves, so they allow themselves to continue to stay by Hitomi's side. In fact, Aika also vaguely read the meaning in Hitomi's eyes that she didn't want to let him leave. In the end, Aika stayed with them until they finished the dinner as a useless labor force but better than nothing. At the dinner table, Hitomi also clung to Aika and refused to let go. When Wei 11 was choosing her seat, she couldn't wait and carefully sat on the empty seat on the other side of Aika. In the process of teaching them how to use kitchen utensils, Hitomi basically didn't say much other than the key points that she had to tell them. Ling and Lanming initially thought that Tong was just too nervous so she didn't speak much, but later they gradually came to understand her character. In that case, Hitomi came out this time just because she was moved by your sincerity. In the process of preparing dinner, Ling Zheng suddenly asked. That's probably it. Hitomi herself said so. Hitomi didn't turn her head to look at him because of the question Aika asked her, she just nodded slightly with an almost imperceptible amplitude. Ling was silent for a while thoughtfully, and then there was nothing more to say. Aika could probably guess what Ling was thinking at that time. She was probably just a little confused about the current situation. Hitomi's taste seems to be no different from other people's, as long as it is light food, she can accept it. But there are also things that she is not good at. Hold it like this, and then move your fingers like this. That's right, Hitomi, who had never touched tableware before, didn't know how to use chopsticks. In this way, Aika had to teach her step by step. Aika stood behind her, bent over and held her hand to simulate holding chopsticks. The back of Hitomi's hand felt cool and comfortable, which made Aika, who had to hold her hand to teach her finger movements, very nervous. Especially while doing this, the eyes of the other three girls were focused on Aika as if under surveillance, which made the atmosphere even more tense and solemn. "Come on, try it yourself." After barely teaching Hitomi to move her fingers a little more flexibly than before, Aika stood up from behind her. The first training target that Hitomi chose was P, who is also a formidable enemy to anyone who can use chopsticks proficiently. It would be okay if they were wrinkled peas, but all the peas growing in the Protoss territory were round and plump fruits. Although Aika wanted to remind her not to choose such a difficult challenge for the first time, looking at Hitomi's profile, she seemed to be eager to try, so she didn't stop her. Hitomi held the chopsticks in her hand and picked up a plump pea. "Okay, it seems okay." Before Aika could finish her words, the peas caught between the twisted chopsticks suddenly jumped out from the middle and fell back into the bowl. Then Hitomi put down the chopsticks. "No need for this." Although her expression was still the same as before the failure, her tone sounded a little angry. In fact, Aika's interpretation of Hitomi's feelings was all wishful thinking, but this time, unfortunately, the interpretation was wrong. Hitomi wasn't eager to try, she just chose the thing closest to hand. "Then use a spoon. It is not something that can be learned overnight. Children have to study hard from birth to learning how to use chopsticks. For those who have never used chopsticks, it is not an exaggeration to regard the process of learning as a concrete manifestation of human hard work." Wei 11 stood up and went to help Tong get another spoon, thus solving the first difficulty Tong encountered before she even had time to enjoy her dinner. Through some subtle performances, Aika knew that Wei 11 had not forgotten the incident that Hitomi had deliberately ignored, but she accepted Hitomi regardless of past resentment. As companions who are similar in many ways, Wei 11 must want to get along well with Hitomi. Although Hitomi's attitude was a bit rude in the spiritual world, Wei 11 was not a gentle girl who would care about that kind of thing. Aika suddenly remembered. He had promised Wei 11 that if he met Tong again, he would make Tong apologize for making her cry. Although Wei 11 may not need that kind of apology, Aika feels that that kind of expression is still necessary. That was a move that could bring Hitomi and Wixi back to an equal footing. As for when to arrange this idea, let's wait until the evening is free to persuade Hitomi to go and talk to Wei 11 alone. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 408. After dinner, Hitomi rested her head on Aika's shoulder and took a nap during the break. She seemed to be a fluffy kitten, and Aika didn't even notice when she started to rest her head on his arm and let out a slight steady breath. Hitomi finished her dinner earlier than everyone else. Her appetite is smaller than Wei 11's, or she is not used to the feeling of tasting food directly in this world. Ling, who had finished clearing the tableware with Lanming, came back. Lanming has never done housework before, but she really wants to do it by herself, so Ling teaches her some tips on housework while doing it. If you don't know that there is actually no special relationship between Ling and Lanming, and just look at the atmosphere between the two of them, most people who don't know will mistakenly think that they are sisters who are in love with each other. When I fought with Mishi and her mimicry magic suit before, the light flame sword also told me that I had to break its core. You are thinking that she should be able to meet us like Hitomi now, right? Ever since she learned that Hitomi had come to the real world, Aika felt that Ling seemed to show unusual concern. Just because she didn't specifically discuss it with everyone, Aika just let her think about it for the time being. Maybe the one in my family has a completely different attitude from Hitomi. Hitomi is so inseparable from you, I can't imagine the light flame sword clinging to me. Are you talking about your magic costume, Lan Ming also wiped his hands and walked back to the restaurant. Although Zilong melting gold also has its own consciousness, it can't appear in my human body like your magic costume before. Can this be considered a good thing? When the barrier between magic equipment and humans was lost, the original relationship also changed, and the positions of both parties changed subtly. Looking at Hitomi, who was dozing next to him, Aika's answer was yes. He raised his hand and touched Hitomi's sleeping face lightly. I think I'm very lucky to be able to get along with them like this. I think it's great to be able to meet Hitomi. Not sure whether it was because she heard the three people talking quietly or because Aika touched her sleeping face without permission. Hitomi woke up from her nap. She looked back and forth at the faces of the three people sitting around the table. Because the topic about her had just happened, they all looked at Hitomi in unison. Although she didn't show her confusion on her face, a big question mark probably appeared in her mind, and she sat upright next to Aika. Tong, I want to ask. Ling took the initiative to talk to Tong. Can you talk to the light flame sword? From my point of view, it shouldn't be possible, but I heard that Wei 11 took the initiative to find it before you, so I think there should be some way. It was rare for Ling to be so proactive in wanting to get in touch with the light flame sword. When she felt Aika's gaze with such thoughts, she turned away anxiously. Every time she wants to find me, she comes to me. I am always in a passive position. Do you feel uneasy because you can't find the initiative in your own magic suit? Hitomi tilted her head and stared at Ling's every move. I don't think you'd want her in front of you. Hope or not is the same thing. I just want to know if there is any way to find her proactively. Hitomi seemed to think for a while. This is Yutra Hill, which is equivalent to being a part of me. You are not allowed to use magic equipment that may threaten you here. It is I who have restricted the freedom of movement of the light flame sword here. Do you really want the light flame sword to be used here? Can Yanjian move freely? You controlled the door when I locked it before, Aika suddenly thought. Simply speaking, is this equivalent to your domain? It's the kind of barrier similar to the one used by Wei 11. If we explain it with human knowledge, that's the case. Hitomi shook her fluffy twin tails. If this restriction is lifted, the light flame sword can move freely here. So that's the case, then, it's not impossible to let her come out. But after that, you will definitely hope that I will restrict the freedom of the light flame sword again. You will definitely think so when the time comes. Why are you so sure of my idea? This was the first time Aika knew that Hitomi would say so many words just to refuse something. It was still unknown why she had such a big opinion on the light flame sword. It stands to reason that the Chiz family and the Heinz family were two ancient families who were partners in the past, and their magic costume relationship should not be too bad. Hitomi stared at Ling with half-open eyes as if she saw an elm head like Aika. There was no magic fluctuation, but Aika knew that Hitomi had indeed lifted the restrictions on other magic equipment on this aviation magic ship. That was the intuition generated by connecting herself and Hitomi. Dazzling golden light spread around Ling, and at this time Aika noticed that Hitomi's surroundings no longer had the carefree atmosphere. As the golden light transformed into the form of a girl with flowing long hair, a closed red paper umbrella suddenly appeared on Hitomi's hand. She raised her hand and pointed the tip of the red umbrella at the girl's figure. The red umbrella was like the gun used by Aika. The silvery white magic trail shot from the umbrella tip collided with the golden sword shadow above the dining table. The cancelling magic spells created a breeze that echoed through the restaurant. The girl wearing a hakama embellished with plum blossom patterns was holding a graceful red-gold longsword. She proudly stood beside Ling and showed a slightly provocative smile to Hitomi. Hitomi looked at the dumbfounded Ling with eyes that seemed to convey, just look at me and tell me. The girl who appeared next to Ling turned her sword of light into golden particles, and her hands were folded in front of her in an elegant manner. After restraining me for such a long time, it doesn't matter if I have a little temper, right? Does it scare you, Hitomi? Hitomi turned her gaze from Ling back to the light flame sword. Facing the elegant provocation of the light flame sword, she didn't seem to want to say anything. Only then did everyone realize that the attacks that had just cancelled each other out were just the two people's actions as if to say hello, and that their power had been controlled to less than 1/10,000th, and they only stirred up such a weak wind. The girl in Hakama with an elegant smile on her face, Guan Yanjian turned to Ling and bowed slightly. "Long time no see, my master. As you wished, I am now in front of you." Ling's thinking has not calmed down at all. He had just asked Hitomi to lift the restrictions on the light flame sword, and she appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. As if he had spotted this opportunity, it was so sudden that Ling didn't know how to react. On the contrary, as a bystander, Lan Ming immediately understood the current situation. Is this the contracted magic sword of the Heinz family? I've known him for a long time. I should be the one who has admired your name for a long time, Her Royal Highness the Princess of the Ila family. It's been a long time since I last saw you. She also said she was very lucky to see you again. Lan Ming's hand caressed her chest gently, conveying the greetings to the light flame sword from the candle dragon molten gold residing in her consciousness. Since Zilong molten gold also has its own consciousness, it has already known each other during the cross-border war with Guan Yanjian and Hitomi. So, does my master have anything to say to me now? If not, I will go and make friends with Hitomi's master. Why are we so friendly? Besides, if you want to come out, you have to tell me in advance. I'm not as looking forward to seeing you as you think. Please wait a moment. Guan Jianjian smiled and leaned down, close to Ling's ear. Has the master forgotten? Although you can fool other people, you can't fool me about what's going on in your heart. Ling's expression froze for a moment, like a mute-eating Coptus chinensis who was unable to express his suffering. After successfully restraining Ling's actions, Guan Jianjian stood up straight again with a victorious smile. It wouldn't be a bad idea if I made everything you did that night public. Many people would want to know, right? Mean. How could Master comment on his magic costume like this? It's just because I knew you didn't want others to know, that I didn't say anything. That night, Lan Ming's gossip radar retrieved interesting things from between the lines. What is the secret that Ling doesn't want others to know? It's the night after the battle in the God Clan's territory. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep. Although I know I'm like a child, it's rare to encounter such a powerful enemy. It doesn't matter if I'm a little excited. That's fine. The light flame sword. Ling tearfully expressed her fabricated mood while glaring at the light flame sword. She would rather be misunderstood by everyone as being as immature as a child, and didn't want Guan Jianjian to reveal what she had done that night. After kissing and exchanging feelings with Ika, Ling, who returned to her room, was also tossing and turning on the bed, unable to sleep. It wasn't the excitement of meeting a powerful enemy at all, it was just a head filled with rosy imagination. Of course, Ika, one of the parties involved, also knew what the night the light flame sword was referring to. If Hitomi can see through herself, there is no reason why the light flame sword inside Ling's body should not know about it. It wasn't the reveal of the light flame sword that gave him chills. I have to say that after a man has experienced a certain level of Shura field, he will become a little shameless. If Ling was willing, he didn't mind publicly kissing her, because it was a consensual act between the two of them. What really made him feel chills down his spine was because the old incident of the light flame sword was brought up again, and Hitomi, who had become as docile as a kitten, suddenly had an aura like a hedgehog again. Should you go back, light flame sword? Doesn't it sound a bit unfamiliar to you if you keep calling me light flame sword? I'm not familiar with you. I'll give you a convenient name like you. Just take a word from your real name and call me Light. So, Light, should you go back? No matter what Guan Yanjian's attitude was, Hitomi had clearly given her an order to be kicked out. Hitomi has only told Aika that she doesn't like others to get involved in her field, such as Lan Ming's Candle Dragon Molten Gold and Komaka's Puppet Master's Cross, but what is the reason for being so dissatisfied with the Light Flame Sword? Although Guan Yanjian seems to have some secrets in common with Ling, and she also has some grudges with Tong, her movements do exude an elegant and decent atmosphere, and her smile that seems to understand everything is even more, in this way. Hitomi gives everyone the impression of an innocent and ignorant girl next door, while Hikaru is closer to a famous lady from a small Yushin mansion. She seemed to completely ignore Hitashi's eviction order and walked around the dining table towards Aika with a smile on her face. We met before in April, Hitomi's master. In April, it was the time when Ling was injured in the forest outside Shigetsutsu Academy, and the light flame sword borrowed its master's body to move around. During that period, the Ling she pretended to be by borrowing her master's body had no flaws at all. Even the three people who had lived with her for such a long time did not immediately realize that she was not the real Ling. Taking advantage of Ling's identity, the light flame sword stole Ling's first confession and conveyed Ling's deepest feelings to Aika. Well, long time no see. It was precisely because of that incident that Aika finally knew Ling's feelings for him, and then semi-forced Ling to admit this fact in person at Chiyu Academy. When the light flame sword was about to reach Aika, Hitomi raised the red umbrella in her hand and pointed it at the light flame sword in front of Aika, forcing her to stop. Hitomi, don't be so nervous, I will never behave like that to your master again. Lan Ming was the only one who had no idea about what they had experienced in the imperial capital in April. Why does it feel like I'm the only one being left out? Those are just trivial things that are not worth mentioning. It doesn't matter if you don't need to know Lan Ming. While Ling was perfunctory with Lan Ming, he stood up and walked quickly to the side of the light flame sword. Come with me for a moment. Ling whispered, grabbed the hand of the light flame sword, pulled her into the deep room, and closed the door with a bang. There were only 3 people left in the restaurant who watched Ling and Guan Yanjian perform a skit without saying anything. After the figure of the light flame sword completely disappeared deep into the living area, the stinging aura around Hitomi quickly disappeared as if the tide was ebbing. The closed red paper umbrella disappeared from her hand without noticing. Hitomi sat back quietly in her seat again, as if the scene where she was at war with the light flame sword had never happened. Tong, what happened just now? Could it be that the light flame sword has done something disgusting to you before? That woman is dangerous. Hitomi, who turned around to answer Aika, said this, her clear eyes also revealing this vigilant message. Danger, she is Ling's magic costume. She shouldn't do anything harmful to us, right? Has Master forgotten what she once did to you? You mean that time? Although it can't be said that he has forgotten it, Aika really didn't take it too seriously, but it can't be called dangerous to that extent, right? Very dangerous. Hitomi said it categorically again. This time she must have used her identity as a sister to warn Aika, so she used such a firm tone that did not allow him to refute. Ever since the birth of that magical costume, he has been spying on other male holders of magical costumes. From a human perspective, there is no doubt that she can be regarded as a frivolous woman. Even though she only revealed the slightest bit about her past, Aika basically understood what Hitomi wanted to express. Hitomi's understanding of her surroundings is mostly compared to the period of the cross-border war. Could it be that the ancestors of our family? The first one brought it upon himself. That was the result of his dissolute behavior. What on earth did my great-great-great-grandfather do to deserve such hatred from Anili and Hitomi? Aika couldn't help but start to worry whether the so many sexual accidents she was facing now were due to the bloodline she inherited from her bohemian great-great-great-grandfather. At this time, Lan Ming took advantage of Ling's absence and asked Aika the question that Ling had just refused to answer. Aika, I'm just guessing, have you and Ling already? Sure enough, the problem you want to escape cannot be escaped after all. The light flame sword only gave her a little face in front of Ling. In fact, it was equivalent to revealing all of Ling's little secrets. Although Lan Ming, who hasn't spent much time with everyone, doesn't know where Ika and the other girls around her have developed, she still understands more or less what the girls are thinking. It is probably impossible to fool them here. As the princess, Lan Ming should be able to keep their secrets well, so Ika took this opportunity to confess the established fact to her. But he only said that he accepted the wishes of the three people. As for further actions, it was of course impossible for others to know without their consent. Is this all? Although Lan Ming showed surprise from time to time while listening to Ika's statement, he quickly accepted it. Although I have thought of this possibility, from an ordinary person's perspective it's enough, forget it, since it's a consensual relationship, I can't allow me to interrupt and comment. But, is this the so-called beauty should only be owned by the strong? Lan Ming's teasing made Ika, who was already full of guilt, feel ashamed. While Ika was making a frank statement, Hitomi did not interrupt him, but just listened quietly. Has Hitomi already known about it? You should know all the things Ika has done. As a magic costume, I will not comment on the master's behavior. If there is anything you want to say, it might feel better to pour it all out to Ika now. This awkward statement is even more irritating to Ika's ears. After Lan Ming finally got the answer she wanted to know, she just nodded thoughtfully.